Welcome to 27 Topics. Our guest today is Mike O'Brien. He's the administrator at the Heritage House of Jasper. Welcome to 27 Topics.
Thank you for having me.
We this month want to talk a little bit about Alzheimer's disease, and you have a Alzheimer's care unit at Heritage House, and so we felt like you would be the expert to tell us everything about it and what all is involved.
Okay.
So tell me a little bit, what is Alzheimer's disease?
Yeah, Alzheimer's disease is a disease that affects the brain. It's a brain disorder. It affects your ability to learn, to remember. It affects your ability to complete simple, familiar, everyday tasks that you may do on a regular basis. An example would be you may have to have the steps of brushing your teeth broken down to you and put the toothpaste on the toothbrush. Now put the toothbrush into your mouth. Now brush your teeth. Now rinse your mouth. Those things have to be broken down for a patient with Alzheimer's disease. Same thing with dining. You may have to set them up at the table with their tray, their plate, take the spoon, take a bite of food, put it in your mouth, those types of things. Someone who needs to be toileted, you may have to take them to the bathroom and show them the toilet and ask them, do you need to use the toilet? So it's a progressive disease, and it does take a lot of patience and kindness and caring in dealing with an Alzheimer's patient.
What are some of the causes of Alzheimer's?
I'm not sure if they really know what some of the causes would be. There's a vascular dementia, which affects the blood supply to the brain. With Alzheimer's disease, they've been able to come up with, through the research that they've done, there are tangles and amyloid, can't think of the correct name for it, that affect the brain cells. And it, as I said, it affects your ability to do simple routine tasks. It affects your ability to communicate. And it's a progressive disease. Today, they have no cure for. Someone who is diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease has anywhere from 3 to 20 years to live, with the average being around 8 years. I believe the youngest documented case of Alzheimer's disease was in a 19-year-old male. It can affect people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. There are some, with the advances in research, they have found that there are some Alzheimer's that is hereditary. They've been able to trace a gene back through families that would be one of the forms of a different type of dementia.
It seems to be a dreaded disease. And when people hear that someone has Alzheimer's, I mean, it just seems like it affects everyone.
Yes, it does. It affects the entire family, friends, any caregivers that you might have. I believe that 70% of the people who are diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease are still at home, which does put a burden on the caregiver. As the disease progresses, that person, the caregiver, assumes those responsibilities, such as helping bathe and dress the person, any type of legal or financial matters that person might have been able to do. The caregiver has to take on those responsibilities. And it's something as simple as driving a car. Somebody in the early stages of Alzheimer's dementia may be able to get out and drive their car, but as the disease progresses, they may get lost on their own street. Familiar faces they may not remember. They may not remember the names of their own children. So it does take its toll on everyone. It's a burden on families to try to provide that care for someone at home.
You hear every once in a while too where now you have an Alzheimer's care unit at Heritage House.
Yes.
And you have specialists who work with the people that have the disease. If they're at home and they're in early stage, you hear people say they walked away from home, and then every once in a while you hear where somebody with Alzheimer's walked away from home and they have a lookout for them. these people just wander away and just don't know their way back?
Yes, that's the thing about the disease, that things that are familiar that you and I on a daily basis would remember, someone with Alzheimer's disease would forget. We may occasionally forget where we place our keys. The Alzheimer's person forgets that they forgot where they placed their keys, and 5 minutes later they really don't care. So, their attention span is very short, their ability to remember is very short. So as you said, yes, they may get outside, and if they turn right instead of left, which is not familiar, and they may go a different direction, they can get lost very easily. I mean, there are documented cases where people have driven their car and hundreds of miles from home.
What are some of the preventive measures? How can we well, first of all, is it an inherited?
There are some forms of Alzheimer's disease that are inherited, that has been demonstrated through research, that there are genes that have been isolated that are precursors to Alzheimer's dementia. I would say if anybody has questions or wants more information, they should contact their healthcare provider, or they can go on the Alzheimer's website, which is www.alz.org. The national site, and the Indiana site would be www.alzindiana.org.
But of course, if we have the touch of Alzheimer's, we probably wouldn't be the one to do that.
There are some folks who know that something's not right. Their ability to remember things like, I don't quite remember your name. I've met you, but I don't quite remember your name. So there are some early warning signs that are familiar. The Alzheimer's patient, starts to question themselves. It may not be evident to their family members or friends. They can still function pretty well in their environment. But they themselves, they know that there's something wrong, and they quite can't put their finger on it.
So we have warning signs, and we can maybe try to prevent it? Is there something that slows it down?
There are medications available, and there again you'd have to consult with your healthcare provider, that there are certain medications on the market that will slow the progression of the disease. There is no cure. Eventually anyone diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease will die. The length of time, depending on when it's diagnosed, it could be anywhere from 3 to 20 years, with the average being 8 years after diagnosis.
The stages of Alzheimer's are just the early stages are maybe once in a while you forget.
Correct.
But then it just progressively gets worse.
It gets worse. Some of the things that you may notice, that things are put not in familiar places, like an iron may be put in the freezer, or your watch may be put in the sugar bowl. An example I can give is my grandmother, who suffered from Alzheimer's dementia. I went to visit her one day and went down to her basement, and she had her mop. She had the strings cut all off her mop. And I asked her, "Grandma, what's wrong?" She said, "Well, somebody broke into my house and put this mop down here. I'm going to cut it up and get rid of it. It doesn't belong here." So I knew at that time that there was something not right with my grandmother. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Well, Grandma, I'll take care of it. I'll get rid of it for you," which eased her discomfort, because she was adamant that somebody had broken into her house. And I said, "Grandma, I'll take care of it for you. I'll get rid of it." So it's a progressive disease, and people process the information differently. They become maybe paranoid, suspicious of others, suspicious of their spouse. That there may be something going on.
It is really. I can reflect on people who have Alzheimer's, or you think they're early stages, and like you said, you hear words, it can be inherited. But then, what are the percentages of the inherited amount versus those that are getting Alzheimer's and there's no history of Alzheimer's in the family?
Yeah, I'm not sure what those percentages would be. There again, you could consult the website. They would have a vast wealth of information there. With the dementia as it is, as I said, I believe that there are 70% of those people who do have the disease are still at home. There may be millions nationwide who do suffer from the disease at any given time, requiring care.
What about somebody that has Alzheimer's and let's say they're in your facility. Now when it's your mother or your father or a relative, when you go in there, they don't know you. you know, after a while you get the feeling, why go visit them? Because they don't really know you.
Right.
Or know me.
Correct.
And you see less and less of the, relatives come to visit. Does that have a bearing on these people, or?
An Alzheimer's dementia person may not remember your name, but your face may be familiar to them. What you would need to do is greet them, introduce yourself, tell them who you are, and let them know that you're there to visit them. You can talk about, topics that might be familiar. They had hobbies in the past that you could speak with them about. Easier to ask yes and no questions than to try to ask them a question that they have to come up with an answer for, because that may become uncomfortable for them. They may not know what day it is. They may not know what month it is. You can provide that information for them, and it puts them at ease. They're not put on the spot to try to have to answer that question that they don't know. But a yes or no question, they can give you an answer, a response to. Just taking them for walks and talking with them in a kind, soothing manner, holding their hand, lightly rubbing their hand. Touch is important, to someone with Alzheimer's disease. Approach them in a calm manner. Always approach them from the front, because you don't want to startle somebody with Alzheimer's disease, coming up from them from behind. Also, even though they may not remember you as an adult, they may remember you, as a teenager. So if you've got a picture when you were younger that you could bring in, and they would maybe remember that. The disease works in your most recent memory backwards. So something that happened yesterday, an Alzheimer's patient may not remember, but they might be able to tell you what their wife fixed for them for lunch 50 years ago. So it's just the nature of the disease. It progresses from your most recent memory through your remote memory. So those things that, if you have a picture book, scrapbook of pictures that when they were younger, would be helpful to bring in to share with an Alzheimer's patient.
So it is very important to visit people with Alzheimer's in a nursing home, or even if they're homebound.
Yes, by nature, humans are social beings, and just because someone has Alzheimer's disease doesn't mean that they can't be social. They laugh, they cry, they like to joke. It's just that they don't remember, after your visit.
Tell you what, we're going to take a little break here, and then we will be back to talk about how Heritage House takes care of people with Alzheimer's.
If you or someone you know has a talent to showcase or an event to promote on 27 Topics, please contact this station.
Okay, we're back here with Brian, and Brian, let's talk a little bit about Heritage House and the Alzheimer's care unit that you have out there.
Okay, Heritage House has a secured unit. It is licensed for 18 beds. We provide full range of services. We also have a staff who has been trained in specifically dealing with Alzheimer's and Alzheimer's type dementias. The care provided, residents are encouraged to do as much as they can on their own, maybe with oversight and supervision. As the disease progresses, then staff members have to provide more and more care. Some of that may be setup help only, where at a meal they may set their plate up and tell them where their silverware, and give them instruction as to what they need to do with it, and then monitor the residents as they eat. Also with dressing. An Alzheimer's resident may not dress according to the season. You know, they may layer clothing in the summer, or they may wear pajamas over their clothes. So staff members will also help them to make sure they're dressed appropriately. We provide a variety of different activities and interests the residents may have to engage in on a daily basis.
So if a Alzheimer's person dresses and puts on the pajamas over the regular pants, now they think they have the right thing.
That's correct.
So isn't it kind of difficult to go and discuss that with that person and say, this is not right?
I would think that you would not tell them that it's not right. It's just, I think what we need to do is let's go in here and change our clothes and get ready for the day. And if they resist that, let them go, come back, and maybe address it a few minutes later, because they will have forgotten. And eventually you can persuade them that, yes, okay, I need to change my clothes. If they're adamant that they're not going to change, then you don't push the issue, and you'll let them go.
And not really
Right.
worry about it. The chances are, I mean, if family would come in and they would want to go for a walk, possibly the family could say, hey, we're going outside, we need to change your clothes or
Correct.
something like that, or
Yes.
can we change your clothes? It's an interesting thing because, they still have their mind to a degree. Mm-hmm. And here we're trying to tell them, and it would seem like there would be a little resistance once in a while when they feel they've done the right thing.
Yes, sometimes you'll never win an argument with an Alzheimer's patient. You will never win that argument. You can encourage them and show them what needs to be done, but ultimately, if they say no, then you have to respect that no. I mean, you can strongly encourage and go back and try again. And some of the challenges faced in long-term care are providing that care that a resident needs. They may be resistant to bathing, they may be resistant to taking their medications. But using a calm approach, try to get eye level with the resident and approach them in a calm and soothing voice. And if at first they say no and resist, don't push it because they get agitated. Back away, try it again a few minutes later.
It just seems, it seems hard. Now, is there any type of medication that their physician prescribes if they are an Alzheimer's patient to maybe slow it down? I mean, what do we do when they're...
There are several medications out on the market that are specifically designed for Alzheimer's disease. As I said, they don't cure the disease. They may help slow the progression of the disease. There again, the doctor would prescribe what he felt or she felt was appropriate for the resident. And a lot of times they will get information from the nursing home, from the nurses, that they are seeing certain types of behaviors, and they may ask the doctor if they can try a certain medication. The doctor will review the request, and if need be, will prescribe the medication.
Now, so you have a unit, you have trained nurses, and of course physicians that know a little bit about how to handle Alzheimer's or what's involved. So you put them to bed at night. Is it a 24-hour care?
Yes, there's 24-hour around-the-clock care. There's no guarantee you put somebody to bed they're going to stay there. So the staff is trained to monitor. If someone wants to get up, then you have to almost play detective to find out. If they're getting up out of bed, are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Maybe they need to use the bathroom. And if they can't communicate that to you, then you have to try to deduce what might be wrong. And it's just a process of elimination. You ask them, are you thirsty? Are you hungry? Do you need to go to the bathroom? And hopefully, through a series of questions, you can figure out what the need is.
Do you always have like a room available? If there's somebody out there viewing this show and they have somebody that they know needs more care than they can receive at home, do you have availability, or is there a waiting list?
Right now, we do have a waiting list, but that doesn't mean that they can't inquire. I mean, they can come out, we can give them a tour of the unit, they can see what we have there, the care provided, and then any questions that they might have at that time, they could ask, and we would be able to answer those for them.
Now, having someone admit it, here's a person who has Alzheimer's and no, I'm fine, is the words that you have. No, I'm fine, I don't need, I'm okay. But that they definitely cannot remain at home or even with somebody, because they can wander away, they can do this and that. How do you convince a person, you'd like for them to make up their own mind to go, but chances are with an Alzheimer's person, they're going to be very resistant.
Right. What you probably need to do at that point is maybe get your healthcare provider, your physician involved. They might be able to provide some help for you in convincing that person that they do need some help. And there is going to be resistance, but usually what happens with an Alzheimer's patient who comes into a secured unit, because things are so routine and regimented, it becomes familiar. They actually have some peace of mind and comfort there because they know things are pretty structured. They may not remember at this specific time this happens, but they have a general idea that, okay, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. So usually at first, they are asking to leave, wanting to go home, needing their family members to come and get them. You just need to reassure them that their family knows that they're okay, they know where they are, and they will be in to visit with you. Eventually, they accept the fact that they need to be there. And what's interesting is we've had people tell us that they've taken mom and dad out to their home over Thanksgiving, over holiday, and after a few minutes or so, mom and dad want to come back because that's familiar, that's their home now.
And it probably all reflects that their memory, short time for the current stuff, is very short.
Correct.
And but it's you always hear these things about people who have family members who have the disease and how to handle the disease, and when it gets to the point, I guess with all of them, it gets to the point where nursing care is of utmost importance.
Yes, it is. You will find that as the disease progresses through the stages, and there are 7 stages of the disease, that when they get down to the cognitive impairments, they may not be able to communicate with you verbally anymore. There again, that person who's providing that care, whether it's a healthcare professional, whether it's someone at home, they assume more and more of the responsibility of care, the bathing, the dressing, the hygiene, the legal aspects, the financial aspects. So it does take its toll on family members, and hopefully the family has a good support system in place that if they need to go out for run some errands, they can have somebody come in and sit with that person.
The Alzheimer's disease, you mentioned there are 7 stages. What are those 7
The
stages?
7 stages of the disease, the first would be no cognitive impairment, where there's no memory problem. They could go to their healthcare provider, the doctor or family friends would not be able to tell there's anything wrong. The second stage would be very mild cognitive decline. They may forget words. They may substitute words for a word that would be what they're wanting to use. The third stage would be mild cognitive decline. That's their ability to plan. If they were planning a dinner party for guests, they may not remember the steps and how to plan that. At this stage, friends and close relatives would know that there's something wrong. The fourth stage would be moderate cognitive decline. That would be a decline in their knowledge of current events. They may not remember the month. They may not remember the day or the year. The fifth stage would be moderately severe cognitive decline. They would know their current address. They may not know their phone number. They may get lost on their own street. The sixth would be the severe cognitive decline. And there, they occasionally would forget their names of their spouse or their children. Longtime friends, they may not recognize or know. The very severe would be seventh, would be very severe cognitive decline. In that stage, they would need help with eating. They wouldn't be able to walk. They may need oversight and supervision with bathing, dressing, and hygiene. So that those would be the stages of the disease.
If they wouldn't have any help, they need help eating, would an Alzheimer's patient starve to death?
Eventually, what would happen is if they lost that ability to eat and there was no one feeding them, there's a possibility they could. If it gets to the point where they're having difficulty swallowing, it would have to be a family's decision whether they wanted to supplement that with a tube feeding, whether nasogastral tube or tube through the stomach. And that would have to be a family's decision, but eventually they would lose that ability to swallow.
Somebody watching this program has questions on Alzheimer's. We talked about, their physician, but possibly admitting someone to the Heritage House unit. What would you recommend they do?
First of all, they need to contact their healthcare provider, their doctor. If they've got questions or concerns that a loved one may have some cognitive decline, that would be their first step. That's what I would encourage them to do. Once the doctor there are a battery of tests the doctors and physicians will do, and they are usually 95% accurate in their diagnosis of probable Alzheimer's disease. Now, Alzheimer's disease can only be verified through autopsy after death. Once they have talked with their healthcare provider and he is recommending placement in a facility, then they can call and take a tour of the facility, see what we have to offer.
Thank you. Is there any closing comments?
I would just encourage those folks who may have a loved one who does suffer from cognitive decline to seek your physician, talk with them. Hopefully you have a strong support group that you have around you that they can provide some relief for you. It's never an easy decision to make to try to take someone out of their home and put them in a long-term care facility. It's a very difficult decision. And it's usually a case of last resort where the family member has taken care of that person for as long as they can, and then their health themselves starts to decline. So, hopefully they have a strong support system. I would encourage them to talk to their physicians, visit the website for Alzheimer's organization, both nationally and in the state of Indiana.
Thank you, Mike O'Brien, Administrator of Heritage House of Jasper, for being our guest on 27 Topics and the subject of Alzheimer's.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you.